Hello. This video is going to introduce you to the offset function. The offset function isn't seen nearly as often as VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, or even index and match, but it does show up occasionally, so it's worth knowing how it works. All right, so we're going to start out by typing offset. And the idea of offset is you start from some cell. That's going to be your reference cell. For example, we could start from cell B6. That is our reference point. Now what offset does is it returns another cell value that's a certain number of cells away. So in this case, if we want to go one row down and two columns to the right, we can look visually. That would be one row down, two columns to the right. We should get 11%. And that's what we see our answer is it gives you a offset relative to that initial cell you picked. We picked B6. 1 down, 2 over gives us that 11%. If instead we picked B7, so we moved down 1, then our offset is also going to move down 1. Now we have our 10%, which is 1 row down and 2 cells to the right of the 10%. Now offset can also be a little bit more dynamic than that. You can make it to where it actually looks up instead of down. If you want to make it look up, now we can make it say let's make it go -2 rows. Actually, let's do -3. Let's do, -3. And we'll do, so 3 rows up and 1 column to the right. And we see, oh, I actually referenced exactly the cell that we're in, and we got a circular reference there. So we want to make sure we don't do that. Let's actually change that to a -4 in there. And we see this cell, loan amount. And let's just work through that. So we start in B7. Right here, we go up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and to the right, 1. So we got loan amount is the answer that we give back. You can also look to the left. Let's change our reference cell just a little bit here. Let's actually go down to, say, C15. So let's see what we get to start. C15 gives us 8%. If we start from C15, we go 1, 2, 3, 4 up, 1 to the right, we get 8%. If we now change that function to -1, now it'll go to the left. So in this case, we see 1005, which is our loan ID. If we start from C15, 1, 2, 3, 4 up, 1 to the left. All right, so that's how offset works. It's basically giving you relative cell values from cells in relative positions versus other cells that you start from. It's a little abstract right now, and that's just how this function works. It's a pretty abstract function, but when it comes in handy or when you see it in a formula, now you'll be able to kind of understand what it's doing. All right, 2 other things are worth noting about offset. One is that it's what's called a volatile function. A volatile function means that it recalculates every time an entire spreadsheet recalculates. So anytime something changes on this spreadsheet, that offset function will recalculate. Right? With small models like this, that doesn't really matter. But when you get into big models with lots of calculations happening, and particularly if you have lots of offsets, it's going to really slow your spreadsheet down. So you want to be very judicious and selective about when you use the offset function if you're going to use it. The other interesting thing about offset is it has a couple interesting optional arguments. So if I come in here, let's actually reset, and let's start with B7. All right, so we're going to start with B7. We're going to stay in that row, so we'll use a 0. And let's say we're going to go 1 column to the right. All right, right now, without going to the optional arguments, it gives us the 113,539. But sometimes you might want to capture not just that value, but say the interest rate and the loan status. Now you want 3 pieces of information back, and you don't want to have to write 3 different formulas. So what you can do in that case is use the optional arguments in offset. So the last 2 arguments are the height and the width of an array that you can return. All right, so if we do 1, 3, for example, it'll give us an array that is 1 row tall by 3 columns wide. So we will get all the data from C7 to E7. All right, so it's a nice feature that you can get actually an array of data back from Excel. The problem is Excel doesn't know how to put 3 different data items into one cell. So if we just simply hit enter here, well, occasionally Excel is smarter than I am. So in this case, Excel is actually updated in its most recent version to where it'll spill the formula across and actually use that same formula across 3 cells. So notice that that first cell is a highlighted formula. In the next two, it's offset gray, which indicates that it's part of an array. If you don't have the current version of Excel, what you can do, we'll restart, is you have to write your formula. We'll still use our same reference, 0 rows, 1 column, and 1 comma 3. All right, I'm going to write that formula, and I'm going to copy that whole thing. Now, when I copy that cell, I'm now going to copy that formula and paste it into all 3 of these cells at the same time. I just held Shift down with 2 right arrows, and now I can paste my formula in. And importantly, now I can hit Control-Shift-Enter. All right, CSE, Control-Shift-Enter. And what that does is it enters this now as an array formula. And the most important thing that distinguishes that is you see these curly brackets are now around the formula in all 3 of these cells. This is how Excel used to work. You notice when I first did this, it automatically spilled this array for me. In previous versions of Excel, you would see this array formula, or in the curly brackets, that allows you to then capture 3 different values. All right, now if I change B7 to B9, we can't change part of the array. So it's always locked together. These arrays are tough to work with. And as a result, it's not something that you use very much, but occasionally you'll see it. Like I said, newer versions of Excel are handling this better, so it'll be easier to use in the future. I just want you to make sure you're aware of it in case you see these formulas that are in these curly brackets.